my sister Laura, and she won the Caston Cup horse race. My father met my mother on the beach at Coolangatta, and her golden locks and clear blue eyes set something else erasing. Mum and Dad had a dynamic and happy relationship, and we had an amazing childhood. Mum passed away in March of 1980. A few years later, Les went on the Love Boat. Yes, the real Love Boat, as the television show The P&O Sea Princess. Judy Canty had been booked on the same cruise by a family after the untimely death of her husband a few years before. I was told by Les it was love at first sight, and Les tripped the light fantastic, twirling Judy in a constant spin, and maybe it was the rock of the boat, but somehow she ended up with a broken arm. That might have been the end for most people, but not for Les and Judy, for they were married soon after the cast was removed. Les the salesman. To be a good salesman, you have to have enthusiasm. Can you hear Les saying it? Enthusiasm. And my father had more than enough of that. My dad, the car dealer, sold $50 sleds, as he called it, in Monrovia, California, for Jack Buchanan, who ended up owning Sun Oil, which became Exxon. They would say, "Can I have a test drive?" Les would say, "No, because you are a deadbeat." And the guy would say, "What? I beg your pardon, how can you call me that?" "I know you're a deadbeat because you wouldn't be on this lot." He said, "Come on inside, bury your pride, and I will help you get good credit. And what we'll do is, you'll make a payment every week, and I will pick a car for you." What a way to sell cars. He sold freezer plans and bumpity bump beds. That's what I call them, you know, the ones that go. And you know, the old saying, selling freezers to the Eskimos? Well, Les actually did it. In Alaska, the biggest problem was things getting too cold, and a freezer being insulated to prevent that would not. And he not only sold the freezers, but he sold the meat and vegetables to go with it in a freezer plant. Les and his brother Ernie sold reconditioned auto transmissions at Hal's Transmissions at West Covina, where it took 40 minutes to pull out and fit a reconditioned tranny, an amazing changeover time. My father always said, "Sell the sizzle, not the steak. The sale begins when the customer says no." He had other memorable sayings such as, "For celebrations of births, marriage and death, hatches, matches and dispatches. Live fast, die young and have a good-looking corpse. Throw dirt, lose ground." And when he asked a curly question, he'd always respond, "Let me say this about that." Or, "But meaning to speak to you about that." And finally, you draw more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. Although there are a few people working at the Melbourne City Council back then, when he was a councillor, who might have thought differently about that. Kids always loved Dad, doing Disney character impersonations such as Dumbo, Donald Duck and Daffy Duck, and going, "Thuffery fuckatash." Dad always loved to party, and boy did he know how to throw a good one. There were a few people who could genuinely be called the life of a party, but Les was one of them. Les is remembered by his wife Judy, his children Lauren and myself, Richard and Shane, and his grandchildren Bree, Liam, Inga, Isabella and Mia. His sister Dolores and family, and his brother Ernie and family. Ernie was unable to make it here from the States due to Ronnie and his illness. We are most grateful to Gary, Ernie's son, has travelled so far to be with us here today to represent us, the Jabara family in the United States. And I thank you, Gary, for coming out. Les's stepchildren, Bill and Carrie, and grandchildren, Rachel, Matthew, Madeline, Jack, Henry, and Stephanie. We are, as a family, would like to thank everyone who is here today, both friends and family who have taken the time to remember Les and to celebrate his life and to all those who have been sent their condolences and remembrances, and I've had an enormous amount. All the time, the phone ringing, people saying, I remember Les this. I've run into people who've called up and said, I only knew Les a very short time, a few days, and it was 30 years ago. But I read it in the paper and I was moved to get a hold of your number, so somehow he tracked me down. Throughout the week, who are unable to be here. One of those is David Mann, who tonight at 8:15 p.m. on 3AW will be sharing his memory in celebration of Les. And if you could all listen to it, you don't have to listen to it on the radio, you can now hear it on the internet or on an app on your iPhone. In closing, Les always said, you have to give 110% in everything you do. And Les was Mr. 110%. Longfellow once said, the heights by which great men reached and kept were not attained by sudden flight, but they, while their companions slept, toiling upward through the night. Dad, you were a father, a husband, a grandfather, brother, uncle, and mentor. But more importantly, you were a